watching Mommy Did You Know? So the purpose of this video is I just wanted to go over some postpartum things that you can expect after you deliver your child. So I'm gonna first go over vaginal deliveries, and then I'm gonna go over cesarean births, because of course some women, they might go through the vaginal delivery and some women might go over the cesarean. Some women even first have a cesarean and then are able to have something called a VBAC, which is a vaginal birth after cesarean delivery, which is fantastic. But let's just go over a little bit about what to expect. So first, for vaginal deliveries. After you have your baby, you might notice that on the vaginal area, sometimes you might tear naturally, and sometimes your doctor will make a small incision before the baby comes out. That is called an episiotomy. Usually they do something called a midline episiotomy. Basically, right before the baby comes out, they might do a little massage, they might put a little local anesthetic in there, they might cut a little bit. That basically, sometimes they do that if the baby's big, they want to prevent the baby getting stuck on the shoulders, or they want to prevent more tear. So that is an episiotomy. The one thing to note is that an episiotomy actually might hurt a little bit more than tearing naturally. Although sometimes it is necessary to have a little episiotomy, and that's fine. I just want to let you know that you might be in for a little bit more pain than if you had torn naturally. So a few things you can do: you can apply ice packs if you want for the first around 12 hours. You don't really need it more than that. You can put Tux pads, which are witch hazel pads. They're fantastic. Dermaplast spray. And you can even use one trick that kind of really works for me is if you take that plastic water bottle and you fill it with warm water, you can actually put it on the vaginal and perineal area as you're peeing, and it actually neutralizes the acidity a little bit to make it a little bit more comfortable for you. So for vaginal deliveries, the biggest thing is, of course, we have the episiotomy versus tears. Tears, sometimes they don't hurt as much, as though of course they are gonna hurt a little bit. You just pushed out a tiny human, but I just wanted to go over that. Now for cesarean births, of course, the big difference is that you have a cesarean incision, which is in usually the lower abdomen. It's transverse, it goes across like this. Sometimes we'll have something called a classical incision, which is when it goes up and down. The biggest reason I'll see that, there's two reasons. One is sometimes if a person delivered overseas and they had one over there, a lot of other countries do classical incisions up and down. So if they previously had a C-section with a classical incision, you might come and actually find yourself having another classical incision. Another reason is if the baby's very, very premature and they have to do a cesarean birth, sometimes they might do the up and down. But usually the majority of the time you'll have transverse incision. So some things that are normal is you might have pain and burning on your incision site. One thing that's very important is to make sure that you're peeing often, because what happens is if you're not peeing, it's pressing against the bladder, and what's gonna happen is all that pressure on the bladder is gonna cause your uterus to start contracting. You're gonna have pain, whether it's vaginal or cesarean. But one thing with the cesarean is it actually causes your incision to burn and sting along with the contraction. So it's even more things to look out for. One thing that really helps with your incision is make sure that you are supporting it. Sometimes an abdominal binder helps. Make sure that you're staying active. You don't need to stay in the bed all the time. It is normal for one side of your cesarean incision to burn or sting more than the other. But of course, if it is anything out of the normal and it's not something that you can tolerate, you can always talk to your OB about it. You can talk to your nurse. You really want to have open communication between you and your nurse, because your nurse is the liaison between you and the doctor. And if you are battling something, don't internalize it. If you're going through a lot of pain, don't keep it all in your mind. You really want to be verbal so that we can make those changes as appropriate. So for vaginal deliveries, we have the episiotomy, or we have the natural tear. It's first, second, third, and fourth. We can go over those in another video as well, but fourth basically is you just tear all the way across. But your doctor can also tell you what type of tear. Then for cesarean births, of course, we have the incision. For incisions, you also want to keep that incision site clean and dry. You can shower, but try not to tub bathe. When you shower, just keep your incision site clean and dry. You can even have soap, just make sure it's like not unscented, it doesn't have those little beads inside with all those little scrubbies, and you should be just fine. Other things to look out for postpartum wise, This goes for vaginal deliveries as well as C-sections. One thing to look out for is it's normal to have bleeding. Of course, all of that, all of those contents from the uterus and from the body, they have to come out. So you're going to have a very heavy-like period for about a few days to a few weeks. Everybody's different, but if it lasts for a long time, or if you have big blood clots the size of your fist or greater, or the golf ball size clots, you really want to let your nurse or doctor know. Another thing also, if you have heavy bleeding. Heavy bleeding is basically if you saturate one pad in 1 hour, that's heavy bleeding. So the period-like bleeding, it is called lochia. So if you start hearing that lochia, and wondering what it is, it basically is just that period-like bleeding. Another thing to look out for that you're definitely going to have is contractions. What helps with contractions is Motrin and Tylenol, as your doctor recommends. Make sure that you do dosing from them before you just starting medications. Usually in the hospital, we'll give about 600 of Motrin every 6 and 650 of Tylenol every 6. Those work well. The Motrin is an anti-inflammatory. It also helps a little bit with the engorgement. And the Tylenol helps with headaches, back pains, and just overall, they work really well together. So just with contractions, one thing to note is Pitocin after delivery. They do give you Pitocin after delivery, and the Pitocin actually does cause some contractions as well. So keep that in mind, and it is normal for you to have contractions when you're breastfeeding. But if your contractions are very strong, or they come suddenly after, let's say a few weeks have gone by and all of a sudden you start contracting very heavily and you start bleeding a lot, you definitely want to talk to your doctor. So those are just a few things to look out for. We have the contractions, and we have the bleeding, which definitely you'll have a little bit after you deliver. As for another thing to look out for that a lot of people don't realize is that your contractions are actually stronger with every baby that you have. A lot of people don't realize that, but let's say with my first, I didn't really have that much contractions. It wasn't really that big of a deal. With my second, I remember every single time he would start breastfeeding, I was like, like my breast wasn't really hurting. My nipples were not hurting because he was latching on perfect, but it was those contractions that were killing me. Best thing for that, really, you just want to walk, you want to go pee, try to urinate like every 2 to 3 hours. It's really helpful, and especially that walking. Drink water. Water's great. Flush out all of that system. One thing to notice too is that you might have some swelling. Swelling is normal. For me, I was lucky I didn't have that much swelling during my pregnancy, but after I delivered, all of the swelling came back with a vengeance. If it's too much, sometimes that is a sign of high blood pressure. But your doctor will be following up on you with that. So I really hope that you enjoyed this session. Pretty much we went over what to expect for vaginal delivery, what to expect for cesarean delivery, how to take care of an incision as well as your perineal site. We talked about how it's normal to have bleeding and contractions, and of course swelling after, and just a few tips to make your day better. I really hope that this helped. Please subscribe to my channel. I have so many good resources for you. If you haven't checked out my website, feel free to. It's mommydidyouknow.com, and I would love to have you on my website and our family. Thank you so much, and I hope you have a wonderful day.